Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Apex. Today we are talking about the Canadian Grand Prix. So we're in Canada, a wet race.
And a very chaotic, very entertaining race.
Absolutely, some great racing.
Oh my god, between teammates as well, it was just phenomenal. And I mean, we had moves like Albon's move, passing two cars into the chicane. And it was spectacular in terms of racing and also competitiveness at the front.
Definitely. So we'll get into Red Bull first of all, talking about the front.
Yeah, I mean, they were the third quickest car of this race. I mean, the Mercs were definitely quicker than them on race pace, and also the McLarens were as well. And yet somehow Max still dragged that car to equal with pole position, because obviously there was a 0.000 gap between him and George. George got it because he set time first. But he still managed to drag that car with the race pace that it did into the win. And I mean, you look at Checo, he didn't have pace all weekend, he was running out of the points all weekend, and it's just, you just see the difference that Max gives.
And also you see how good Max is as a driver. You know, where everyone says, oh, it's the car, he's in the car, it's the Red Bull that's the faster car, but it is Max. Max is bringing that talent, that inherent talent, that he's just so good, and he can bring that car from anywhere and put it into P1.
Absolutely, and we look, there was every single type of condition, and yet, as you were saying, he just masters every single one. Yeah. Whether it was tipping it down with rain, or whether it was just like a dry line on a wet track, he just nails it every time. He keeps his cool now, which I definitely think he's matured a lot more. He keeps his cool, he lets people pass when he knows he's going to get past later, and just rocks it. I mean, it was a fantastic win for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can't really say much more. But again, going and talking about Checo, it's kind of one for the other. Like Checo,
it really is
a bad weekend for him.
Very poor, yeah.
Obviously with the accident and losing the rear wing. I mean, and then you talk about what you've said.
Yeah, so he really shouldn't have driven that car back on the track. He should have left it in the wall and got out of the car and DNF'd. However, Red Bull didn't want the safety car, so they instructed him to drive it back to the pits in an incredibly unsafe manner. And for that, they got a big fine, and also he got a 3-place grid penalty for Spain next weekend.
Which is valid.
Which is very, very valid, because obviously you don't know where that carbon fibre was going to fly. It could hit a marshal, it could hit anywhere. It didn't matter. So yeah, and it was just a very, very poor weekend for Checo. After he got that contract extension for a 1+1. It is looking bad for Red Bull, especially in the constructors.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've said it before, and we'll say it again. Red Bull need two really strong drivers. You know, they've got Max. Max is going to win the Drivers' Championship, there's no doubt about that. But Red Bull, to win the constructors, they need a really strong driver pairing. And we're seeing the really strong driver pairings in the likes of Mercedes, between George and Hamilton. You know, they're on par. I mean, Piastri and Lando, they're on par, you would say.
Yeah, but and Sainz and Leclerc are also very equal as well. And you've got three teams that are now very much on par in pace with Red Bull, who just have such better driver pairings. So because all the teams have closed up, that margin now that Checo was off, maybe was it 4 or 5 tenths in qualifying, that used to just mean he was in P2. Now it means he's in 11th.
Yeah.
I mean, he's behind everyone, and they just can't risk that anymore. They are going to be losing millions and millions of pounds from losing the constructors by having him in the car.
Yeah, and I think Red Bull are really going to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, going into 2025 or further, they're not going to want that as a team.
Absolutely not. And I do think there is a way that it's going to lower team morale as well, because all of the people don't talk about this, but all of the employees have a bonus system on where the team finishes in the constructors. And if you have a driver in your team which is literally costing you a £5,000 bonus at the end of the year, you're going to not feel great about that. And he is going to lose morale in the team, especially if he actually stays for the entirety of his contract.
Absolutely, and I think as well, talking about team morale and things like that, you've obviously got two drivers in a garage, which they're in the same garage, but they've both got their own side to the garage. One side of the garage is with Max Verstappen, and they're always winning, or they're always on a high. The other team are always on a low, or DNF'd, or
the bottom end of the points,
or whatever. And it's that stark difference between the two must be so difficult to deal with.
It must cause such a divide in the team. And I mean, fair play Christian Horner for actually kind of being able to control it at the moment, but I really do think that's just going to keep splitting and splitting and splitting.
I think so. So we've talked enough about Red Bull.
Yes.
We'll go on to Mercedes.
I mean, they are back. They are
Incredible.
back. I mean, they brought the new front wing, which they had kind of tested in Monaco with one car, and they were immediately on pace. They looked like the quickest car this weekend, and it was shown with George sticking it on pole.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it before, with the same time as Max, but because he said it first, he started on pole, which is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Mercedes, you know.
Yeah, they are back. This is start proof. I mean, the Merc always kind of had poor quality pace, but would always come back in the race. Being on pole showed that they were back, and in the race they showed that as well. They had great pace. They were only, I think, about 10 or 12, less than 10 seconds off the lead at all times. And they were fighting the McLarens. They were fighting the Red Bulls.
And each other.
I mean, yeah, let's get into that because it was entertaining, but Toto must have been on the edge of his seat.
Oh my gosh. I mean, they came on the radio, didn't they, saying, we are fighting, but please keep it clean. Obviously,
did they? No. Yeah, I think George was kind of going into that move on the 68th lap going, if I take each other out here, that's life.
And he also went into that being like, this position is mine.
Yes, yeah, I mean,
that is mine.
with the chicane, when you're doing move, you go around the outside because that is the only way where you can kind of, if they're going to go too deep, you can go off and there is less risk of a crash. He sent it up the inside of the chicane. He was like, I am taking this position, whatever happens. And I mean, fair play for Lewis, keeping it clean.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toto must be on the edge of his seat.
Toto must be literally on the edge of his seat. But obviously, P3 and P4 for them is an incredible weekend. You know, in terms of points for drivers and constructors. Toto will be going away from that very, very happy.
Absolutely, and I think genuinely this will give them hope that they can maybe fight the Ferrari in the constructors, maybe even the McLarens, maybe even the Red Bulls.
Yeah.
I mean, Red Bull are getting 25 maybe to 30 points a race weekend because of the lack of points from Checo. And I mean, if you look, Mercedes got 28 points this weekend, and this was like a P3 and P4. They should have had at least 2 cars on the podium, I think.
Yep.
If they start nailing in these points, they are going to be catching them.
Absolutely.
And it'll be at a rate of knots for sure, because Max can't keep on winning every race. With cars as equal as this now, even though he is the robot that he is, people will catch him.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said about Checo and all this stuff, you know, relying on Max to bring in the points for the team when someone like Mercedes has got 2 strong drivers really up there in the points is going to be quite difficult.
Absolutely. But I mean, let's move on to Ferrari. A very, very poor weekend for them. They just had no pace in both qualifying and the race. They had no pace. They tried something with Charles, putting him on the hards early. It didn't work. He was slipping and sliding all over the place. They eventually retired both cars because obviously Sainz had the crash as well.
Yeah.
It was just a weekend to forget.
Absolutely. I think going into Spain, they're going to want to, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, going into Sainz home race, they're going to be hoping for a better result.
Absolutely. Yeah. So not much else to say.
No.
But we'll go on to McLaren.
It's a rough one because we had the pace to win.
Yeah.
We absolutely had the pace to win, and I mean, if it's always a if buts and maybes in motorsport. If this wouldn't have happened, if the safety car hadn't come out, Lando would have won the race.
Yeah.
So, and you know what, I was talking to my mum about this. It makes me feel better about Miami because Miami, he won because the safety car came out. He had the pace. He went away from Max, but all in all, he won because the safety car came out. Here, Max won because the safety car came out. So, if not, Lando would have won the race. So he would be at 1 race win now.
Absolutely.
So I'm content in the fact that he deserves it. But it's still P2 and Piastri in P5. Only 5 seconds off the Mercs as well.
Yeah.
I think it was a great performance.
I think so. Really strong from McLaren, you know, in terms of fighting the Mercedes and obviously Ferrari's not getting in the points at all.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good weekend for McLaren in terms of points.
Absolutely. And I mean, what did we get the most in the... no, so we equalled Merc with the highest amount of points this weekend. That's going to be great for us because we would have caught Ferrari by 28 points and we would have closed down Red Bull as well. So I genuinely think they will be going away from this weekend very, very content.
Very happy. Absolutely.
But we'll finish off with Aston Martin, and it was a great result for once.
Yeah.
P6, P7 for the team, and Lance with a great home result.
Which is very strange because I don't think we've said this very much this season.
No, we have not at all.
I think, I mean, in terms of Lance and Alonso, I don't, you know, we're talking about like driver pairings that are equal. I wouldn't say they're equal at all.
That's kind of like a Max Checo situation.
It's a Max Checo,
yeah.
But then again, obviously, for them to bring in something like P6 and P7, it makes a huge difference.
But I do think the Canadian crowd really do bring the best out of Lance, because he has never finished out the points in his home race. He has also never got into Q3, so he's always qualified outside the top 10 and then got back in the points in the race. So fantastic result. They will definitely be taking that from their past results this season.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll be happy with that.
Definitely.
So let's pause now and then go on to Alpine.
Right, so let's move on to Alpine. Yeah.
A great result, I think.
I mean, which is very bizarre.
Yeah.
Alpine.
I mean, obviously they came to Monaco with a lighter car, and they did see a lot of promise in this, and clearly it's working, because a double points finish, huge for them. I mean, at the start of the season, in 9 races' time, if you told them that they'd be getting double points finishes,
you would never
have predicted that.
No.
But obviously it is a little bit controversial with Alpine. Obviously, after it's been announced that Ocon will not be staying with the team, they told Ocon to let Pierre by, and Pierre didn't let him through in the end. So it looks like that team is still going to be fiery until the very end. But I mean, a great result.
Yeah, a great result walking away from that weekend for them, absolutely. Despite the controversy. Yeah, we're going to Williams.
It was a poor weekend for Sargent.
Yeah.
It really, really was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was slipping and sliding all over the place. No pace at all. I mean, it was very, very poor.
Talk about stark differences between him and Albon. I think Albon had a great weekend, obviously up until what happened.
Yeah, but again, that wasn't his fault.
That wasn't his fault. He got caught in the accident, so not much he could do. But that overtake that he did,
oh my god,
2 cars,
is one of the greatest overtakes
up the outside, then down the inside, absolutely insane.
2 millimetre perfection as well. It was unbelievable. I mean, he was running in the points until his crash, and I mean that just shows again, as you were saying, the stark difference between the drivers.
Yeah.
And Williams need a better driver. I mean, look, this weekend the rumour mill was ramping up with the fact that Williams have supposedly signed signs. Whether that's true now or not, who knows, because there are rumours about him being at Alpine next season. But yeah, it's a poor weekend for the team.
Poor weekend, and I think I mean, between him and Sargent, I just think the stark difference, and obviously both of them DNFing is just unlucky. But I think Sargent is. I mean, we've said it this whole season, haven't we?
Yeah. Sargent has just been off the boil, and he clearly, I think he knows his time in that team is ending. So I feel like he's just trying to show himself well for any teams outside of F1, whether he goes to IndyCar, whether he goes to WEC, but his future is not with Williams.
No, I agree. Move on to Racing Bulls.
I mean, it was a great result for Daniel.
Yeah.
I mean, he needed it, clearly, after the past couple of results. But he showed that the race pace is still somewhat there.
Yeah, absolutely, somewhat.
Yes, somewhat. I mean, he was kind of running in that kind of gaggle of cars that was in a DRS train at the end. But the pace is there.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I think we have to take with a pinch of salt as well the fact that they've got a great result from the weekend. 2 Williams and 2 Ferraris both DNF'd.
Absolutely.
So they're kind of doing really well on someone else's failure.
Yes, exactly. As we've always kind of said, I mean, the Ferrari should have been up there.
Yeah.
And they were ahead of the Alpines, which, I mean, that's where they've been all season. So there isn't much kind of. It's there, but they're not kind of in the front running where they have been on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
But also from this weekend, we did get the news that Tsunoda has extended his contract with RB, so he'll be here for 2025. If they keep Ricciardo, I'm going to be very disappointed, quite frankly, because Lawson deserves that seat, quite frankly. And it should be Tsunoda Lawson for 2025, but we will see. We will see. And I mean, going on to another poor weekend, Sauber, just no race pace, all quality pace like usual.
Like usual, I was going to say. I mean, it's not unheard of that we've said that. That's been the case pretty much all season, apart from 1 or 2 here and there.
Yeah, 1 or 2 freak results, like you show in China where he got into Q3 or something like that. But it has always just been this consistent.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's pretty much all you got to say about that, isn't it? And we'll lastly go on to Haas.
Oh, what a strategy call at the start, stick him on the wets.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Magnussen was carving through the field.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, from Haas anyway, that's insane. And obviously we've had previous tyre wear problems and all this stuff, and then to stick them on the wets.
Yes, to have the balls to do that, and then it working. I mean, he was up to, I think, P4 at one point. Obviously, they then had to pit onto the Inters, which scuppered their strategy. I mean, I was watching it with a couple of people, and I literally said, they're still going to end up outside the points. And, of course, they did. But it was a great stretch.
Yeah, and it was pretty much just unlucky that they ended up outside the points, wasn't it?
Really, really was.
But good to see from Haas coming out there with just throwing in a bit of spice.
Yeah, a little bit of spice. Just spice up the start of the race,
Yeah.
and show that Komatsu has still kind of got that brain to go, no, it's wet. Stick them on the wets. Be confident in the decision. And they were the only ones, and it worked.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there you go. So that's Canada wrapped up. Obviously, we're on to the Spanish Grand Prix next. So we'll see you for that one.